Quinn Curtis, and you are listening to Joyful Living, and I am really looking forward to this conversation that we're going to have today here on the podcast, and so glad that you're listening. Truly honored and so grateful for your support and your loyalty to this show. I just have the best listeners in the entire world. I just feel so grateful and so blessed by each of you and how your lives interweave with my own and how we get to play together in this space. So thank you for being here, and thank you for listening and supporting this project of bringing more joy back into our everyday lives. And not just waiting till someday or something changes in your life to finally have joy in a life that you love, but to be able to more intentionally create that and more deeply connect with and feel it and have it be more natural, because joy truly is your natural state. It is the state of your soul. It's who you are. And so any of the work that we do here or talk through on the podcast, or any of the work that you might do with me professionally, with any of the programs or opportunities that I offer, that is the whole point of all of them, is just to help you to let go of what is not joy and what is not supporting you, what is not true, essentially, so that you can step in more fully and more deeply into what is true. Because the truth is that you matter. The truth is that you are amazing, and you were born for aliveness, right? And joy is your natural state. It's the natural state of your soul to be joy and light and love. But we've just come to this messy earth space where we have learned the exact opposite of all of that and have taken on a lot of it as our identity, that, well, I'm just an angry person, or, well, I'm just a mean person, well, blah, 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 whatever our story might be. And instead get to, through this work, really get more clear on, well, what's actually true and what is actually a story. So one of the big stories that I would love to kill today is the story of being a nice girl. And now, if you're a man listening to the show, you can translate all the language to being a nice boy, right? Because I know that a lot of men have similar programming to that, but I will be speaking to it through the feminine, so please adjust accordingly. So this whole topic is really coming about and fresh of mind because I had a really intense situation lately where I made a big purchase, and then immediately after I hit buy, I knew it wasn't right. I knew I had made a mistake, and I felt sick inside and terrible. And so then I started this process of trying to self-justify and trying to make it right, and then consulted one of my friends, and then she wasn't able to convince me out of that shame and guilt and anxiety because she was like, yeah, actually, I don't think that is a good deal, what you just invested in. And it was a very stressful situation. And so I, within 3 hours, made up my mind and decided, okay, I need to pursue a refund. And this was for a program that I was going to buy, and the program wasn't even starting until next week. And so, there's plenty of time before. Plus, when you buy like a car, it's a huge investment, or even a house, right? There's a 24-hour grace period for buyer's remorse typically, that you decide, oh my gosh, we just made a big mistake, and you can go and get a refund, right? So I thought, okay, it's in integrity for me to go and pursue this refund process right away before I've taken advantage of any of the material or anything like that. And they did have a 30-day money back guarantee, so I thought this will be no problem. I'll just explain to them the situation, and it'll be, totally no big deal. They'll understand. They're good people. They're a respectable company, no problem. So I sent them this response, and oh my gosh, I've made such a mistake. I'm so sorry for the inconvenience this may have caused you and your company, but may I please get a refund? And let's just say over the past few days, I have been dragged into a really painful situation of trying to resolve this refund and have this work out, because they are pulling out or have pulled out every single stop of why they won't honor the refund that is clearly on their website and on their purchase page. And it just became a whole thing and a whole mess. So finally last night, before I went to bed at like 1 a.m., because I was so just wrapped up in all this and trying to find resolution, finally I had to write a really hard email for a quote unquote nice girl like me to write. And that email included me saying, really how I was not happy about how this was going. I wasn't appreciating how I was being treated. I felt like they just wanted my money and didn't care about me as a person. I felt like they were just trying to sell and swindle instead of actually do what was right and show up to serve their market. And I felt like they certainly weren't trying hard to have me be a repeat customer or somebody who would recommend them to my network, which seems insane in the digital worlds that we live in, to not have good quality customer service and just really look out for your people. And I voiced that this would never happen in any of my programs. If anybody ever had just invested thousands of dollars with me and knew within the first 24 hours it wasn't a good fit, you better believe I would be returning their money lightning fast, because I want to work with the people who it's in alignment. And I just don't believe that that's a healthy way of making money, right? So I was voicing some of these pieces, and then at the end had to throw in the real clincher of this needs to be resolved in the next 24 hours or I will pursue legal action, which honestly killed me a little bit to say, because nice girls don't say things like that. And nice girls don't do those kinds of things, right? So I went to sleep and felt like, okay, I've set a really clear boundary. And then I woke up with an anxiety stress hangover this morning. And so it was really icky, right? I just started to feel like, oh my gosh, what will they think of me? They will think that I am the meanest person. They're going to think that I am, some bitchy, emotional, crazy woman, pardon the language. But, that's so often, especially as women, what we get cast as when we try to set a clear boundary, when we try to have a clear qualifying conversation about what's in alignment and what is not for us and what will work and what won't. And so I just saw, this gut reaction, this trap that I've been working in my system on a new level. It's something I've been working with for a long time, but on this new level was so therapeutic, because I see that this nice girl, nice boy kind of a thing is an epidemic. And on the other side of that would be the mean girl or the mean guy, and we're all trying to avoid that, or we're really identifying with that and we're okay. But it can be really tricky to find the healthy space in between. And so what I've been really leaning into in my process of working through this nice girl thing, as I have for years on many levels, is really shifting out of nice. I'm totally doing air quotes as I'm saying that, and instead leaning into kindness. Because kindness has a totally different energy than nice does. Nice is like, I'm going to be nice to your face, but behind your back, I'm going to talk crap about you. Or I'm going to be nice to you even though you don't deserve it, right? It's just, it can be manipulative. It can be fake, right? It can be just messy. And then being this need to be perceived as a nice girl or a good girl is also extremely stressful in situations like this, because I was realizing, and maybe this is just me, and some of you may write in and disagree, and I would be grateful that your experience has been different. But in my experience of being a woman this many years on this planet, I have had time and again situations where I have been expressing how I really felt in what I felt like was a very clear, responsible way that was sensitive to their feelings, but was just clear and direct. And in that clarity and in that directness, I felt myself being perceived as that a bitchy, emotional, crazy woman just for having clarity of opinion or for wanting things to be a little bit different of a way. And so I was seeing, here again, gosh, what does that nice girl actually do? It causes so much pain. And so I was seeing that, one of the ways that nice shows up is that nice just wants to keep the peace, which is different than being peaceful, right? It's very different. Keeping the peace is relative to just keeping everybody happy, which is totally in connection to trying to not make anybody uncomfortable. So it's this part of us that really just wants to comply with things and wants everybody to like us and to be okay and be happy, which can be a really fake kind of an experience rather than what I believe is more desirable, which would be kindness, which is really like, let's lead our lives and operate in our relationships from a space of love. And when we really understand love, then we see love is full of respect for ourselves and our own needs, and full of respect for each other and each other's needs, right? There's a mutual win-win respect here on so many levels. And so this kindness piece instead of niceness, I don't know, that's been a big shift for me that's been so therapeutic and helpful and helped me to really see, especially throughout this process, that I didn't need to turn on that beastie part of myself to get what I needed with this refund, that I could maintain a space that was still very respectful and clear and direct, and had no mucking about in it, right? No room for them to mistake my intentions or mistake what I was needing or what needed to happen, but also do that in a way that was very respectful and truly kind. So instead of resulting to, name calling or going into a total fear response and telling them how I was going to just do a smear campaign about them online and do all this craziness, then I was really feeling into, just what's real, what's clear, what's going to really work. And I couldn't in integrity tell them that their program was crap and I needed a refund because of that, because that wasn't really the reason. The reason was it wasn't a good fit for me, and it just wasn't in alignment for me to do it. And it wasn't in integrity for me to do it. And so I stuck with those reasons and saw how I didn't have to dive into any of those icky spaces and try to emotionally manipulate or do any of those things like sometimes we feel like we have to, especially as women, to try to get what we want or get what needs to happen, right? And so I'm just seeing this space, especially if you've listened to the past episode 84, about being a safe space, right? This is a huge element that relates to this of, as we have these intense emotions come up within ourselves, being able to be a safe enough space that we can listen to what's coming up and we can respect it and we can honor it and hear it and then make wise decisions as a result from it. And so what we see is that the more comfortable we get, or the more we strengthen that muscle in being a safe space for ourselves emotionally and with tense situations, then it allows us to be a lot more comfortable with our own feelings and with other people's feelings, and then being able to really find clear, direct, healthy resolution as a result. And so if that's something you're wanting to dive in deeper with, I'm not going to rehash all of that here in this episode, but I would definitely go back, listen to that episode, and snag the free ebook, which is like crazy valuable, so that you've got that as just a quick guide. It's so powerful. So knowing that, just describing a little bit more of this piece. So what I was seeing is that, or just being reminded of in this experience, is as I woke up with that stress hangover, because I was jumping back into shame and guilt about feeling mean or angry by being clear and direct about what my needs were, and potentially making somebody unhappy on the other end. And so there was this whole inner dilemma happening inside of me. But then I got to a point as I was really working through this of realizing, oh, this is just holding a line, right? This is just, clearly defining a healthy boundary. This is saying, I will go with you this far on this subject, and I can't go this far with you. So you want me to jump through all sorts of insane hoops in order to get this refund? And I'm saying absolutely not. That I cannot, it's not in alignment for me to jump through a billion hoops when this should be a really easy, peaceful refund, right, in this situation. And so it's reminding me of mama bears, right? Now, mama bears are such good parents. They take such good care of their baby cubs. In fact, we went to the Tetons this past summer, and there's this amazing mama bear, which I wish I could remember her name, and she has been living by the roads for years in the Tetons, and everybody comes to hopefully get to see her and see her with her cubs. And she's figured out that if she raises her kids by the roads, her cubs by the roads, that the tourists aren't going to hurt them, and they're going to be much safer from predators because the predators don't come where the people are. And so, mama bears are smart like that, right? They've learned how to take care of what is most important. They've learned how to nurture their little ones. But then if their little cub gets out of hand or is going in a place where it's dangerous, you better believe that mama cub is going to nip at them or is going to growl at them or get their attention some way loud and clear. Because in this mama bear example, she knows that it can be a matter of life or death whether or not her cubs listen to her, right? The same is true of if she feels that they're in danger with a human or with anybody else around. You better believe she's going to be loud and clear about her boundary of how much space she needs to have in between that human and the cubs for things to be okay. And she has a very, low threshold of degree of how much you can fudge on that boundary for her to be comfortable. And so just like that mama bear, it doesn't make us not a nice person to hold a boundary. But I see this happening rampant all over in the women in my world, that in the hopes and the attempts of being nice, which we think is being good and which we think is being, the most loving thing we could do is to just be nice. It actually isn't the most loving thing we could do. So truly what we want to see instead is that we want to be able to let go of our story around being a nice girl or a nice boy and instead allow this yummy shift to happen where we can just return to what is true about us, that we can be in this space where we know that our natural state is joy. Our natural state and way of being and doing in this life is love. And that when we have a mama bear moment, when that boundary needs to be loud and clear, that's healthy, right? I used to picture motherhood being like Mary Poppins, and I'd just be singing all the time and with spoonful of sugar and amazingness. And it took me becoming an adult to recognize, goodness, Mary Poppins has some pretty healthy boundaries. Crazy healthy boundaries, and that's probably why she's able to sing with them and give them a spoonful of sugar, and she knows where her magic is and how to access it and how to bring her magic into her world with her kids. We can create these same kind of possibilities as we hold those healthy boundaries as well. So as we do so, it creates more joy and aliveness in our life because we have this really full range of emotion instead of being stuck in this very limited range of emotion, where we're saying I can only feel these feelings that are good feelings versus I can't ever feel these feelings that are bad feelings, like anger, disappointment, guilt, shame, whatever it might be, right? So just a little side note on that, I loved in some of my training in my earlier years with NAMI, the National Alliance for Mentally Ill. One of the things that they taught is that depression is anger turned inward. Anger turned inward, right? And so when we don't listen to these emotions, when we just let them fester, we try to suppress them or push them down, and only feel the good emotions like joy and happiness and like we think, then it causes a lot of pain. So, of course, this is really important. Sorry, my furnace came on and it's so loud all of a sudden. I'll try to speak up, and I'm so sorry for the audio. It'll go off in just a second. But, so let's see, where was I? Oh, so it's important to remember as we're talking about joyful living in all of these episodes, we are talking about the natural state of aliveness, your natural state of beingness. And joy isn't always happy. It really isn't. But to anchor ourselves to joy rather than just pursuing and craving and seeking happiness all the time can be a very healthy shift. So one of the pieces I wanted to share with you in closing with this subject is one of the pieces that I was led to see as I was really trying to work through all of this over the past few days. And I was led to see the 3 poisons in Buddhism. And I honestly had overlooked this subject years ago because the 3 poisons in Buddhism, which the poisons are essentially the roots of unhappiness. So in the context of this Joyful Living podcast, we could say these are the antithesis of joyful living. This is the opposite of joyful living, are these 3 poisons. So I overlooked them initially because I didn't identify with any of them initially. So I'll share with you what they are if you haven't heard them. The first is ignorance. The second is hate. And the third is greed. So when I first looked at that, I was like, oh, I don't have a problem with any of those. Check. What's our next lesson, Buddha? Wrongo. Totally dumb mistake to make, right? We should never... I know. I hear it too. So let me just walk you through. I found this amazing article on thoughtco.com, and we're posting the link in the show notes so that you can take a look at this article as well if you'd like more details. But I just found these 3 poisons and the information and context that they gave to be just magic and so powerful. So with ignorance, they said ignorance is unawareness or obscured awareness, like something's in a way of you seeing clearly. So it's delusion and blindness. And they said that ignorance is the root of hate and greed happening. It starts the whole thing. So it said, it's ignorance of the fundamental nature of reality and the 4 noble truths. It manifests as a belief that phenomena are fixed and permanent, so that things can't change, right? That's how we could say that. It manifests in the belief of an autonomous and permanent self, and it clings to this belief and the desire to protect and even elevate the self that causes greed, hate, and greed. And then it says that the antidote of ignorance is wisdom. So I wanted to unpack just really quickly what wisdom means in my world, and I hope that this definition is really healing and supportive to you as well. The definition that I use for wisdom is that wisdom is an open heart and an open mind, right? Eyes and mind being connected. So when we've got that openness in both places, that's where we see true wisdom. So some of us have been in relationships where we have been fully open-hearted, but our eyes are shut tight to all the messed up stuff that's happening and all the places where it is just not working, right? So that's not wise. And then in other situations we've been in, we've maybe had our eyes wide open where we're seeing nothing but people's faults and the places where things could go wrong, and we've closed off our heart. That's not wisdom either. One of my favorite teachers, Marion Woodman, says that with true wisdom, justice is no longer blind. That's because the heart and the eyes are wide open in both places. So that the antidote to ignorance is wisdom, that true open-hearted, open-eyed wisdom. The second principle of hate looks like anger, aversion. It arises from ignorance because we don't see the interconnectedness of all things and beings, and instead experience ourselves as separate, leading us to judge things to be desirable, where we want to grasp them, or to feel an aversion to them, where we want to avoid them. We feel angry with anyone who gets in between us and something we want, and jealous of people who have what we want. And we hate things that frighten us or seem to pose a threat to us. It's says the antidote to hate is loving kindness. So in this one, I was seeing that there's a lot of anger that I wasn't necessarily dealing with and I was repressing. And it was about things that are getting in the way of something that I want. And then hating things that were frightening me and were scaring me. And so I love that the antithesis is loving kindness. So here again, as we're talking about death to the nice girl, right? In that place, instead of that superficial trying to balance the ever-changing tides of everybody's opinions and perceptions and preferences and not rock the boat, right? Instead, we're staying very grounded in the space of real loving kindness that is so respectful and thoughtful and respects both ourselves and our own healthy boundaries as well as the needs of others. The third is greed, and this was described as a desire or attraction for something we think will gratify us or make us somehow better or greater. Boom, there. It also refers to the drive to preserve and protect ourselves, and an example they gave was acquiring things to elevate our status, like stylish clothes in order to be popular or admired. Or it also shows up as hoarding things, so we'll have them even if others must do without. Looks like they said self-glorification rarely satisfies us for long, however, because it puts us at odds with other humans, many of whom are seeking self-glorification also. So we use and manipulate and exploit others to get what we want and make ourselves feel more secure or safe. But ultimately, this only makes us feel more and more isolated or lonely and alone, we could say. So the antidote to greed is generosity. So bringing all of these pieces together, I felt like, wow, that's such a powerful, solid anchor for the pieces that we can let go of and how we can make those little shifts so that we can really remain in our full range of emotions in a very healthy way where we can hear, oh my goodness, I have a problem with this and I have a lot of emotions coming up about it, and so I am going to listen to it instead of shutting it down or shoving it down. And I'm going to hear it, and I'm going to value it, and I'm going to allow it to be. I'm going to allow myself to feel the full range of emotions and no longer judge any of them as being wrong or bad or right or better, but really see it as this entire symphony of aliveness and what it really means to be alive and to be able to feel. So I pray that this helps and supports you in your life and your journey in creating more joy and experiencing more joy in your everyday life and in all that entails. And I just have so much love for you and really hope that you know that I'm cheering you on in receiving and opening yourself up to greater and greater levels of joy and a life that you truly love. So I'd love to hear any of your comments or insights and reflections in the show notes, or feel free to email me directly, but I hope that this has been a supportive piece for you. Oh, also the Joyful Living Facebook group. Please join us there and bring in any conversation you'd like to have around these topics to take it deeper. Otherwise, I'm excited to talk to you soon and hear how this develops in your world and supports your path. And meanwhile, know that I'm sending you so much love. We'll talk to you soon. Bye. And in the end, only love will last. You've been listening to Joyful Living. If you haven't already done so, be sure to email me at quinn@joyfullivingmovement.com so I can send you our yummy Joyful Living welcome package filled with lots of awesomeness, including access to our private Joyful Living network. I read every email from my listeners and would love to hear from you. Also, be sure to leave a review on iTunes, and most importantly, have a joy-filled day.